Who hasn't heard of Vincent van Gogh? His art is everywhere. Our clipboards, diaries, and Kindle covers are all covered with pictures of his starry nights and wheat fields with cypresses and his irises and, of course, his sunflowers. But how many of us have heard of Johanna van Gogh Bonger? Vincent van Gogh died in 1890. All his life, his younger brother Theo, an art dealer, supported him in every way, financially as well as emotionally, allowing Vincent to devote his life to painting. Theo did his best to promote his brother's art, but Vincent was still a little known obscure artist when he died. A grief struck Theo died just 6 months later. He left behind Johanna van Gogh Bonger, a widow at 28 years of age, with little or no money, a 1 year old son, and hundreds of Vincent's paintings. But remember, at that point in time, Vincent van Gogh's paintings had no value. No one was even willing to hang them in their gallery. Johanna fought single handedly to bring attention to Vincent's art. She literally gave her blood, sweat, and tears to make the art world sit up and take notice of her dead brother in law's genius. Not for the money, but for the love of family and her staunch belief in his art. If not for her, we would have never heard of Vincent van Gogh. The Secret Life of Sunflowers by Martha Molnar blends facts and fiction to paint an awe inspiring picture of the woman who opened the eyes of the world to the art of Vincent van Gogh. Let's switch on the reading lamp. I'm Asavri, and on this channel, I review books and talk about reading in general. Let's look at the details of today's book.
Facts and figures.
The Secret Life of Sunflowers was self published by the author Martha Molnar in 2022. It is a fiction novel with a dual timeline, one historical and one contemporary. 402 pages long, available in Kindle, paperback, and hardcover formats. The link to buy the book is in the first pinned comment and in the description below. Now for the contents of the book, but no spoilers, no worry, just
The cover story.
as I mentioned before, the novel has two timelines. In the contemporary timeline of the novel, in the present day, Emsley Wilson is a Hollywood auctioneer. She co-owns an auction house in Los Angeles with her ex-boyfriend, Trey, and her former best friend, Dia, who are now romantically involved with each other. Emsley's personal and professional life is falling apart. Emsley is very close to her grandmother, Violet Villar, who is a renowned artist. She's recently suffered a stroke and is in a hospital in New York. Emsley visits her, and Violet gives her a wooden box filled with old letters and a diary. When Emsley begins reading the diary, she discovers that it belonged to Johanna van Gogh Bonger, Vincent van Gogh's sister in law. From here, the novel alternates between the entries from Johanna's diary and the happenings in Emsley's life. In the historical timeline, Johanna Bonger was introduced to Theo van Gogh, Vincent's younger brother, by Johanna's brother Andries. For Theo, it was love at first sight, and he proposed to Johanna just a short while later. But she refused his proposal. However, they kept corresponding with each other through letters. 1.5 years later, she accepted his proposal. But a little over a year after the marriage, tragedy struck, and Vincent died. The two brothers were very close and wrote to each other almost daily. Theo's health collapsed after Vincent's death, and he also died 6 months later. Johanna inherited Vincent van Gogh's paintings. They were all she had, but at that time, they were not worth anything. He had barely sold 1 or 2 paintings during his lifetime, often giving away paintings in exchange for food and alcohol. Despite her grief and societal pressure, Johanna opened a boarding house to support herself. She was determined to fulfill Theo's dream of making Vincent's art known. She began organizing exhibitions, translating his letters, and promoting Vincent's work. Thanks to Johanna's vision and determination, posthumously, Vincent van Gogh became a celebrated artist. In the contemporary timeline, as she reads the diary, Emsley is inspired by Johanna's story and finds the courage to face her own challenges. Now, for the reasons why I think this book is definitely worth reading.
Speaking my mind.
The single most important characteristic of this novel is that Johanna's story is written as authentically as possible. Even though it could be said that only half the novel is about Johanna van Gogh, it covers the most interesting part of her life, the part which tells us about her life with the Van Gogh brothers, and the later part where we read about her struggle to support herself and her toddler son, and her untiring efforts to preserve her brother in law's art and promote it. She cooked, she cleaned, and literally broke her back running the boarding house. In any spare time she could manage, she translated Vincent's letters to Theo because she knew that they would become important one day. She took on other translation projects to supplement her income. Every month, she got a few more canvases framed out of whatever money she could spare. She kept sending them out to art dealers and galleries, hoping to persuade them to display them. No one else was willing to represent Vincent van Gogh. In fact, some dealers offered to buy the canvases for a pittance and scrape off the paint and reuse them and use the frames as kindling for fire. Can you believe that today? Remember, this was the 1890s and 1900s. Women rarely even went out without chaperones. Sculptures, paintings, any art by female artists was not recognized or displayed in galleries. In that period of time, when Johanna took it upon herself to become Vincent's agent, she faced a lot of resistance due to the prevailing patriarchal mindset both in the art world and society at large. Martha Molnar has done extensive research and stayed true to the facts. Whatever slight embellishments may exist in the book, they are done only in the interest of a better reading experience. For example, in one scene, an art dealer whose help she is seeking refuses to take Johanna seriously and insults her. In real life, the insult was not done to Johanna's face, but rather the dealer had put it down in a written comment after Johanna arranged an exhibition of Vincent's paintings. So, yes, there is dramatization and a small amount of creative liberty taken, but the major core of Johanna's story stays authentic. The reason I find this even more impressive is because after reading this book, I was so filled with admiration for Johanna van Gogh that I read everything I could find online about her and the Van Gogh brothers. I happened to come across another historical novel only about Johanna van Gogh. I enthusiastically bought that one too and read it. It was one of the most awful books I've ever read. For the first time, I'm contemplating posting a negative review of a book. I don't like bashing books because I believe every book is a labor of love and I don't like disrespecting the author's efforts. But I'm appalled by the baseless fabrications and sleazy innuendos peddled by this cheap novel under the guise of artistic freedom. It's an insult to the great artist, his family, and the mountainous efforts of Johanna van Gogh in bringing his art to the world. I may sound very critical, but that's because I'm truly disturbed by the dishonesty of that other novel. If you would like me to post a detailed review clarifying my objections to that novel, let me know in the comments below. Or else I'm just going to leave it at that. Coming back to today's book, reading that novel gave me a greater appreciation of how well Martha Molnar has written this novel, carefully weaving as many interesting facts as she could into the story while adding just a little bit of drama and style. I do wish Martha Molnar had written two separate novels instead of one because Johanna van Gogh deserves a good book dedicated to her outstanding life story. Nevertheless, it is a good novel. The story of Emsley is also engaging, and the interweaving of the two stories to show how Johanna serves as inspiration for Emsley is done very well. I do have a suggestion for further reading if you're interested in learning more. An official non fiction biography of Johanna van Gogh Bonger, written by Hans Leuten, was published in 2022 after years of intense research. Hans Leuten is a senior researcher at the Van Gogh Museum in Amsterdam, and the biography has been published in collaboration with the museum. Today, I would like to quote from outside the book simply because this quote gives a much better idea of what a battle it must have been for Johanna to get recognition for Vincent van Gogh. One, because he was little known when he died, and two, because she was a woman representing his art in a man's world.
Quote unquote.
This is the documented written comment on Johanna van Gogh that I mentioned earlier in this episode, that an art dealer had made after Johanna had organized an exhibition of Van Gogh's paintings on her own. Mrs. Van Gogh is a charming little woman, but it irritates me when someone gushes fanatically on a subject she knows nothing about, and although blinded by sentimentality, still thinks she is adopting a strictly critical attitude. It is schoolgirlish twaddle, nothing more. The work that Mrs. Van Gogh would like best is the one that was the most bombastic and sentimental, the one that made her shed the most tears. She forgets that her sorrow is turning Vincent into a god. Hear the insulting language. Admiration for Van Gogh's painting is schoolgirlish twaddle just because Johanna is a woman. This is the kind of blind bias and chauvinistic opposition that Johanna van Gogh faced. And yet she persevered tirelessly. And today we are the beneficiaries of her perseverance. Imagine our world without Vincent van Gogh's art in it. Now it's time for the LINEDSCAPE rating of the book.
LINEDSCAPE Rating.
Up there is a link to the video that explains my LINEDSCAPE book rating system. Today, the parameters are rated between 7 to 10, with novelty and engagement scoring 9 and impact scoring 10. The overall score is 80 over 100, which makes it an exact 4-star book. Now it's time to put my thoughts.
In a nutshell.
The Secret Life of Sunflowers by Martha Molnar brings us the amazing story of Vincent van Gogh's sister-in-law, Johanna van Gogh Bonger. Vincent died in obscurity in 1890. His brother and Johanna's husband Theo died just 6 months later. The only reason the world knows about Vincent van Gogh's art is because of the tenacity of Johanna van Gogh Bonger. She believed in her brother-in-law's genius and fought against societal norms and the apathy of the art world to bring his art into limelight. She is someone we should be grateful to, and her story is an inspiration across the ages. I definitely recommend reading this novel. If you like this episode, please give me a thumbs up. Hit the subscribe button and the notification bell icon. Share with your friends and family. The more, the merrier. Do let me know if you want to hear more about that novel that I do not recommend reading. Visit the Reading Lab every Friday for a fresh review. This is Asavri signing off for now. Have fun under the reading lamp. Switch on, read on.